The medical bay doors hissed open, and Arya Ven stepped through with her arms wrapped in white synth bandages from wrist to elbow. The sterile smell of regeneration gel clung to her like a second skin, barely masking the copper tang of blood beneath. She'd hoped to slip through the hab wing unnoticed, to reach her quarters and collapse onto her bunk before anyone saw her like this. But the universe, as always, had other plans. Kiro hit her at knee height. The Velakir cub, all rust-colored fur and oversized ears, slammed into her legs with enough force to make her stumble. His triangular snout immediately pressed against her bandaged forearm, nostrils flaring as he drew in deep, shuddering breaths. The growl that emanated from his small chest was anything but childlike. "Kiro, buddy, I'm fine," Arya began. But the words died as 4 more cubs rounded the corner at a dead sprint. They swarmed her like a pack of miniature wolves, though the Velakir resembled no earth animal she could name. 6-legged, fox-faced, with bioluminescent patterns along their spines that now pulsed angry crimson. They pressed against her legs and circled her boots. Every single one was sniffing, scenting, cataloging the damage she'd tried to hide. Kiro's growl deepened. His crest, the fan of crystalline spines that would someday mark him as a warrior, flared outward in a display of pure rage. "Chemical burns," he snarled in his people's clicking language, which the translator in Arya's ear rendered as accusatory and sharp. "Acid. Kethrian. Acid. Damn." The cubs were too smart for their own good. "It was an accident," Arya said calmly, dropping to one knee so she was at their eye level. 5 pairs of golden, slit-pupiled eyes fixed on her, with an intensity that would have been adorable if it weren't so unsettling. "The cargo bay had a leak in one of the chemical storage containers. I sealed it before anyone else got hurt." "You sealed it with your hands?" Kiro's voice cracked with disbelief and fury. His smaller siblings chittered behind him, their bioluminescence shifting to distressed yellows and oranges. "I had gloves on, gloves that melted." This from Sarah, the smallest cub, whose voice trembled. She pressed her face against Arya's knee, and Arya felt wetness there. Tears. The Velakir cubs cried when their pack was hurt. God, she hadn't wanted this. 6 months ago, when Arya had signed on as the sole human aboard the Wandering Star, she'd been warned about the Velakir. Pack species, the recruiter had said. Extremely loyal. Protective to the point of violence. And their young imprint fast. What the recruiter hadn't mentioned was how completely and utterly the cubs would claim her. It had started small. Kiro following her on her rounds through the ship. Then his siblings joining in, a tumbling mass of fur and curiosity. Then the whole pack, 15 cubs in total, orphaned from a colony raid, and being transported to a safe haven, deciding that Arya Ven, human engineer, was theirs. They slept outside her door. They brought her pieces of their rations. They growled at anyone who raised their voice near her, and now, as she'd feared, they discovered what she'd been trying to hide. "The medical team already treated it," Arya said softly, placing her unbandaged hand on Kiro's head. His fur was silk soft, warmer than it should be. "I'll be healed in 3 days. You know how humans regenerate. Slowly." Kiro interrupted, and the word was both accusation and anguish. "Humans heal slowly. And poorly. You don't have redundant systems. You don't have adaptive cellular matrices. You're fragile. We prefer resilient," Arya said with a slight smile. But Kiro wasn't having it. He pulled back, and the bioluminescent patterns along his spine flared brilliant red, the color of challenge, of war. "Who was with you in the cargo bay?" Arya's smile faded. "Kiro." "Who?" The other cubs took up the chorus, a dozen young voices demanding justice. "It was an accident," Arya repeated firmly. "The Kethrian crew member who was supposed to check the storage seals forgot. That's all. They feel terrible about it." "Forgot." Kiro's ears flattened against his skull. "Forgot, and you bled. Forgot, and your flesh burned." "Yes." The cubs exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them faster than Arya could follow. Then, as one, they turned and began moving toward the door. "Oh no you don't." Arya shot to her feet, ignoring the spike of pain from her arms. No hunting down crew members. No defending my honor. No biting anyone. Kiro turned back, and for a moment, Arya saw not a cub but the warrior he would become, fierce, uncompromising, absolutely certain of his purpose. "You are Pack," he said simply. "Pack protects Pack. You protected us. Now we protect you." "I'm not Pack," Arya said gently. "I'm human. I'm your temporary guardian. Until we reach New Valar. That's all." The cubs stared at her. Syrah's luminescence had turned a heartbroken blue. Kiro approached slowly, deliberately. He sat at Arya's feet and looked up at her with eyes far too old for his young face. "You sat with Mira when she had night terrors about the raid. You taught Jek to read Galactic Standard because he was too proud to ask the teachers. You give us extra rations from your own portions. You sang us human lullabies when we couldn't sleep. That's just being decent. You threw yourself on top of us when the ship was attacked last month." Kiro's voice was quiet now, but no less intense. "The hull breach in Corridor 7. You grabbed as many of us as you could and covered us with your own body. We felt your bones crack from the pressure differential." Arya had no answer for that. "You are human," Kiro continued, "which means you are weak and fragile, and you heal too slowly, and you have only one heart and one liver, and you can barely smell and you can't see in 3 spectrums, and you have no venom and no claws and no armor." The cubs around him chittered agreement, a symphony of insults that somehow felt like love. "But you are also human," Kiro said, and his bioluminescence shifted to brilliant gold, the color of pack bond, of acceptance, of forever. "Which means you are brave and stubborn, and you protect those weaker than yourself, and you endure, and you choose who to love, instead of following instinct. And you chose us." Arya felt her throat tighten. "Kiro, so we choose you." He pressed his snout against her bandaged wrist, infinitely gentle now. "Pack protects Pack. Always. Whether you accept it or not." The other cubs moved in, a living blanket of warmth and fur and fierce, unshakable loyalty. Arya sank down among them, her arms aching, her heart full of something she couldn't quite name. "I'm going to be fine," she whispered. "We know," Kiro said, settling against her side. "Because we'll make sure of it." And as the cubs purred around her, their bioluminescence painting the corridor in warm golds and gentle greens, Arya Ven understood what the recruiter had really meant. The Velakir young didn't just imprint. They claimed, and once claimed, a human became something more than they'd ever been alone. They became Pack,